Hey everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Ford News. He is Jonathan Ford. Follow my next at Ford Jonathan 5. I'm Brian London. Follow me at Miami Radio Beast. It's a special edition as we recap the entire Democratic National Convention last night, the final night, night number 4, the night that Kamala Harris officially accepted the nomination to be the candidate to represent the Democratic Party for the presidency. And Jonathan, it was another spectacular night at the United Center in Chicago, although we did not get the aforementioned special guest. And there's members of Congress taking shots at you on Twitter, but that's okay. We can get through it. It was still an amazing night.
Yeah, so there was multiple sources that were also posting this to where it actually started with The Hill and a few others started that there is a gap at the DNC. So we checked multiple different sources, and they're also stating that there is a gap, that there was potential special guest. So a, a large amount of accounts started posting this. And of course, one of mine caught fire with like 27 million views, which frankly, I did not mention any names. I
Right.
didn't say who was going to be there. I didn't suggest who was going to be there. I just said reports are out that there's a blocked time frame at the Harris or DNC convention, that there is reports that there's a special guest. And of course, when I was at work and I texted you, hey, who's the special guest? You're like, nobody. And my response was, WTF. So anybody can figure out what that means. But a huge mistake by a bunch reporting that, obviously, and getting it wrong. So everybody that's watching this and everybody on X obviously deserves an apology for getting their hopes up on something that obviously never transpired.
So I was watching with a couple of friends, and I showed them your post on X, and I'm like, look, this something's gonna happen, and we're all trying to figure it out. And then like it's getting towards the end, and they keep looking at me like, dude, where's the special guest? And I'm like, hey man, I don't know. But here's the funny thing is, uh, after it was all over, I went on to TMZ because they had reported earlier in the day, a couple hours before the final night started, that Beyonce was going to perform. They had that story. And I went back on TMZ after it was over and the story was still up. They hadn't corrected it or taken it down. So who knows what happened, but a lot of people were on the same page to something that didn't happen. That's okay. What did happen was a fantastic night. As I said, it all rounded up in Kamala Harris giving a wonderful speech to accept the nomination. I thought it was just the right tone, just the right speech. Jonathan, what were your thoughts of night number 4?
Yeah, I mean, obviously VP Harris completely stole the show. And it was, she's always come across to me rather presidential, but last night it was like a whole nother confidence level that she was sharing. And she definitely portrayed that because there was a CNN undecided voter panel. And out of the 8, 6 of them said they went from undecided to Harris. So she definitely came across, even to the majority of the undecided voters on that panel, as presidential. I will say that out of the 8, 1 still remained undecided or wasn't going to vote at all. And then 1 did say Donald Trump, but she did win on that panel. So I think if you take that, now I don't think she's going to win 6 out of 8 of every undecided voter, but I think it's a huge indication of how the people portrayed her during the speech, and it was absolutely phenomenal speech.
So I do want to get into in depth on the polling and where we are and all of that because I learned some information this morning that I think is important. But I think I want to save that for our regular weekly show so we have more time to really dig in to those numbers and discuss it and have a more thorough conversation. The bottom line is that, I was listening to Morning Joe this morning, and Joe Scarborough, who is tied in, said, listen, these public polls are great and everything you see is trending in the right direction. He said it this morning, I just talked to someone, multiple people in the Harris campaign that tell you that their internal polling, things are a lot closer. So we'll have to kind of look and see how these public polls go versus what we hear about the internal polling moving forward. I think the bottom line is this is going to be a tight race. And as Michelle Obama said the other night, everyone has got to do something to make sure this thing goes the right way. The one thing I thought came over, and first let's just talk about last night. There were some great speeches. I thought I was a little perplexed by having Governor Cooper be kind of the person that set the table for Kamala Harris. I don't know if that was, how they made that decision or where that came from. It's not that he's not a bad speaker, but, I almost would have been like, well, I think I would have put Oprah there, or I would have put someone there that was kind of going to get the crowd hype before Kamala comes on. But they chose to put Governor Cooper, which is fine. He's great. There was a lot of other great speeches, though. I thought Adam Kinzinger, obviously being a Republican, was really important. I thought Leon Panetta, being the former CIA director, former Secretary of Defense, was really important to talk about that foreign policy aspect and Kamala Harris's impact on that. I thought that was really important. But I think overall, the sense I got from the night, and tell me that what you picked up on from this, was if you had asked me to watch this same convention 20 years ago, and I didn't know any of the people involved, I just listened to the speeches, I would have told you, isn't that the Republican National Convention? They're talking about foreign policy and patriotism and the American flag and USA, and that's kind of the sense I got, is that what we saw last night wasn't a leftist, Marxist, communist, whatever they're trying to make Kamala out to be. That was a big tent, right down the middle convention, and we're here for everybody, and we know what's important, and we're patriotic and know where we need to be in America.
Yeah, I think they're trying to give you the contrast that everybody thinks that to be a patriot or be an American, you have to vote Republican and you have to be MAGA. And what they're giving you is a different option that basically telling you that you don't have to be Republican to be an American. You don't have to be Republican to wave the American flag, and you don't have to be Democrat to vote Democrat. You can be Republican and vote for Harris and not be a Democrat because democracy matters, law and order matters. And I think that's where they were toning that down a little bit as of attacks just specifically on Donald Trump. And they're trying to speak more to the voting base of the Republican Party, or not even the Republican base, but those that aren't the MAGA base, those that are the moderate, the centrist, and the undecided or independent who typically lean Republican. That's who they're speaking to the majority of last night. But I did catch exactly what you're talking about.
So my dad historically has been a Republican, right? But Trump comes into the mix. He can't, like, he cannot bring himself to vote for that guy. And I imagine my dad watching last night. I haven't talked to him, but I imagine my dad watching last night as someone that has been a Republican for almost all of his life, feeling like, wait, I kind of feel like I can agree with a lot of this. Like, this makes sense to me. What I saw at the RNC with Trump rambling for 90 minutes with all of his grievances and it being about himself, he's like, my dad would say, I don't identify with that. That was my party, but I don't identify with that anymore. And I think that's kind of the perfect person that they were going at.
It Donald Trump. I went back and I watched parts of it, or kind of skimmed through his speech a little bit, and it was like a grievance or a poor me speech, or a me, or everyone's out for me. And VP Harris was completely different. Hers was about me, but it was about let's get to know me, and here is um, my family. Here is how I grew up. this is the policies that I'm going to push for or on my agenda when elected in 2024. So it was completely different. And the energy, again, was completely different. Like we can talk about the speeches and stuff, but it was so like I went back and watched, and the RNC was just so stagnant and just dry and just no personality, very little interaction. And then you get to the DNC and it's pumped up, energized, people are engaged. The speeches are actually interacting with the actual audience on the correct pronunciation of VP Harris's name with the two little the nieces of
Yep.
VP Harris that basically did the whole comma law, and then they kept uh, orchestrating it like a musical to the crowd, just so people that continuously mispronounce her name could get it right. But it was a wonderful 4 days. The ratings for the first 3 days were basically the same, just a little bump for Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. And the only other thing is for the 7 networks. Um, VP Harris had 15 million viewers, while Donald Trump, I believe, was around 10 million viewers for that same time slot between 10 p.m. and midnight. But we'll wait for the final numbers to come out later on today.
So, obviously the sequence you talked about with Kamala's grandnieces doing the Kamala, that was very powerful. Obviously, I was in tears. The Sandy Hook situation, that
Yeah.
was extremely powerful. Gabby Giffords, how amazing was that?
Please welcome former Arizona Representative Gabby Giffords.
Hello, fellow Americans! I'm Gabby Giffords. I was born in the great state of Arizona! I was born with grit. I grew up racing motorcycles, mucking stalls, and exploring the beautiful desert. I fell for an astronaut. For 5 years, I served in Congress from a swing district. Everybody called me a rising star. Then on January 8th, 2011, a man tried to assassinate me. He shot 19 people. He killed 6. Terrible, terrible day. I almost died, but I fought for my life and I survived. I learned to walk again, one step at a time. I learned to talk again, one word at a time. So many people helped me as I worked hard to recover, including a decent man for Delaware who always checked in. He still does. Thank you, Joe Biden. Thank you for everything. Joe is a great president. My friend Kamala will be a great president. She is tough. She has grit. Kamala can beat the gun lobby. She can fight gun trafficking. Kamala stood up to Wall Street and the drug company. She will protect abortion access. She will defend our freedom. She saved lives. join me in voting for Kamala Harris. Bravo! Thank you. Woo!
That was powerful for sure. The Central Park Five with Reverend Al Sharpton coming out there.
I love these guys. These are my brothers. These are my brothers. Yes, indeed. America. I am Yusuf Salaam. A New York City councilman representing my hometown of Harlem. That's right. Man. Representing my hometown of Harlem, USA. And listen, as my friend Corey Wise just said, 45 wanted us unalive. He wanted us dead. Today, we are exonerated because the actual perpetrator confessed and DNA proved it. That guy says he still stands by the original guilty verdict. He dismisses the scientific evidence rather than admit he was wrong. He has never changed, and he never will. That man thinks that hate is the animating force in America. It is not. We have the constitutional right to vote. In fact, it is a human right. So let us use it. I want you to walk with us. I want you to march with us. I want you to vote with us. And together, and let me tell you, this is going to be so beautiful. And together, on November 5th, we will usher in Kamala Harris and Tim Walz into the White House. So I want to do this. When I say when they, I want you to say see us. When they, see us. When they, see us. When they see us, America will finally say goodbye to that hateful man. We will say what I have said after 7 long years on wrongful incarceration. Free at last. Free at last. Free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
You know, their lives were basically ruined by Donald Trump. Them being out there. There was a lot of powerful moments that I think will stay with a lot of people for a while. But, you know, the most important part of it was Kamala's speech. You know, that was the finale, right? When you go to any kind of a show, the thing that sticks with you is the ending, the finale. And I thought she hit every note that she had to hit. She looked presidential. She sounded presidential. And, you know, the interesting thing is, Lawrence O'Donnell was talking about this last night on the after show on MSNBC, that basically, you know, he saw Kamala Harris speak in kind of a private gathering when she was still the DA in San Francisco. And he knew then that she was going to run for president, that she could be president, that she had it all. But through her time as vice president and as she ran for president herself, she hasn't kind of been put in the right position to look presidential. And last night, we finally got to see what he saw, 20 years ago, that she has that in her.
Yeah, and the biggest part where it kind of, even though I thought she was presidential, the best part of her entire speech was the contrast that she made to the American people. And she spoke exactly how my personal beliefs are uh, regarding the conflict in Gaza, where she first started out by saying she supports the Israeli people, and Israeli people should always have the right to defend themselves. And as president, she will continue to help Israel in that fight to defend themselves. But the great part was at that moment, you could see something click, and it was, but also we have to end this conflict because thousands of people in the Gaza Strip are suffering. They're starving to death. They're being killed. So we have to end that too. We have to end the hostages. And Brian, we've talked about this multiple times, and it's always been about and should be about for everybody the people of Israel not having to suffer any longer and the people of Palestine not having to suffer anymore.
Correct.
Who
1000%.
cares about the whole the politics with the prime minister, or who cares about Hamas, who is a terrorist organization? But what we should really be focusing on, and what the protesters should be focusing on, is uh, the people that are suffering on both sides. And that's where I get aggravated, is we just talk about the people of Palestine, or the protesters just talk about the people in the Gaza Strip suffering, but there was people in Israel that suffer every single day too with the conflict, especially on October 7th, or they don't discuss the 100,000 people that have been killed in Ukraine because of the conflict that Russia brought onto their front door. And I think at that moment when Harris spoke on that, it almost felt like she was like speaking directly to me when it came to that particular issue.
There is a large Palestinian and Middle Eastern segment of the population in the state of Michigan, especially around the Dearborn area. And there's people this morning talking about, because they didn't have someone represented the Palestinian side of things address the convention, Kamala could lose Michigan, what have you. Listen, it's not a lot of time, but there's still just over 70 days left in the campaign. She's going to be able to get her message out about, her thoughts on the Middle East. She did that last night. She's going to have more opportunities to get everyone on the same page. By the way, if you think Donald Trump is going to be sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, think again. So think about that. So that was something that caught my eye. The other thing that caught my eye was the enthusiasm in the building, and just how much fervor there was throughout the 4 days of the convention. The enthusiasm never dropped. There was never any shots of people falling asleep or leaving or any of that. Jonathan, to me, that makes it a successful convention. That you kept up the energy level from day 1 to day 4.
Yeah, and there's definitely going to be a significant bump from the DNC convention. And it was just well played throughout the whole thing. The speakers, I can't really state one that was bad. Um, I and they just played everything out all the way from the RNC to where President Biden waited to basically step aside and endorse Harris just days after the RNC completely just smothering out whatever bump they could have got from that. Just and then quickly uh, getting the delegates to back Harris, hundreds of millions or well over $500 million now of fundraising, millions of people volunteering, and just in the past 5 days leading up the day prior to leading up to the DNC and all the way up till midnight of last night. I haven't done the figures again. It was well over $100 million just in that 5 day stretch, including the $3 million that was between 12 and 12:42. So it was $3 million raised in 42 minutes. And at one point they said, and I haven't verified this, but they said last night after her speech they were raising basically like $4 million to $6 million an hour.
Yeah, so after she was done speaking, they raised over $7 million. The entire day yesterday, the 24 hours or the last 24 hours, I should say, between 3 p.m. yesterday and just as we were recording this, 2 p.m. On Friday, it's been just about $1 million an hour. And I can tell you that so far this week, from Sunday to Sunday, and obviously we still have 2 more days, there's been over $123 million raised. So the donations keep coming in. The volunteers keep signing up. People still want to make phone calls and go knock on doors. People want to do something, like Michelle Obama said. But the key is, Jonathan, we just had this great convention, and everyone is on a high right now. You got to keep it up, because elections can change in a heartbeat. There's been plenty of times when someone had a lead at this point in the race, and then something happens, what have you, and when the country is this close, 47% and 47%, and 2 percentage points is going to decide an election, anything can make that 2% go away in a second, in a heartbeat.
Yeah. The crazy part is, I was looking at this just the other day, is that's more true now than what it has previously. But the one thing we have to understand is there's probably a significant amount of Donald Trump's base that no matter what he does, they're not going anywhere. And why I mean is because there's 34 convictions. There's liability for SA. There's liability defamation of that SA. There's multiple fraud cases that he's been found liable of. And the list goes on. I mean, he's still got a pending case in Georgia, a pending case in DC, and potentially a pending case in Florida, depending on the 11th Circuit of Appeals. But there's tons of cases out there that if that wasn't going to be something that was going to shake the bedrock of Trump's support, then nothing will be. So it even makes it a little more challenging for Harris to continue to be out there and win over the undecided and the independent voters, and the few that are not necessarily the Trump base are always Trump, but the ones that can still be persuaded over.
Yep, for sure. All right, so the DNC is over. Take a breath for about a second. Now it's on till November. For all of you that have been so kind to be watching these daily updates, we appreciate it. Our regular show comes out Monday around 9 a.m. Eastern. We record it on Sunday night. And I don't know, Jonathan, we may have to keep up some of these daily updates. Maybe we need a Ford News Daily segment. I don't know. As we get closer to the election. Something to think about. But I can say this. Those of you that have listened on a podcast, make sure you subscribe. And those of you that are watching on YouTube, absolutely smash that subscribe button. There you go. Jonathan is smashing it. Hit the thumbs up, hit the bell, be notified when new videos dropped, and comment and interact with us and I'll jump on there, or our double secret editor, Matt, will jump on there. Jonathan will jump on there. We'll have a conversation with you going back and forth on the YouTube channel. So we appreciate everybody. We hope you enjoyed the week of shows around the Democratic National Convention, and we keep it moving right here on Ford News.